So one of the things you're going to be doing during this workshop is we're going to be looking at a bunch of pieces of dashboard, and you can play with them in Andy's personal dashboard and not worry about, or not going, I can remember all this stuff. So now let's go back to the slides, and I'll go and drop back to this personal dashboard periodically to illustrate something about real time. All right, so we're going to be looking at here are 3 workshops. One of them involves the day-to-day use of the process dashboard. And the personal projects has also got a really good introduction there. This is something that David Tuma added last year or so. So we're going to be going over those pieces. And during that time, I'll go back and forth with Andy's personal dashboard. Second workshop is on the WBS Editor. And we're going to dive into that and show you just how powerful it is. Give you some context outside of software and show you how it can be used to set up a plan for a team that's not doing software and how powerful WBS Editor is. You're not going to get a full-blown tutorial on WBS Editor, but it'll be a demonstration of the real-time demonstration of it, and you can follow that along also with the Macy's data backup. I'll remind you about that when we get to that piece. Third one is how to use probe in dashboard. There's 2 halves to it. First half where you plan with it, second half where you capture your actuals. So we'll touch on both of those in detail. And there's a couple of videos in here showing you, no audio in the videos. I'll show them, bring them up. And I want to include them in the material downloaded so you can run them later. But it shows how you use dashboard to do the first and second half of probe. All right. And then a summary, incredible 2 or 3 slides. I'll spend half an hour on those. All right. We'll take breaks also after each module. I hope the modules don't take more than an hour, but I want questions asked along the way because of the length of this workshop. Don't wait till the end. And also, this is a second half of a class we teach at NAVAIR. So if I make some assumptions and you go, wait, what does that stand for? Or wait, you didn't talk about this topic, bring it up. I will try to have the chat open. I don't know if I can see it. So if someone sees anything in the chat and they have a mic, let me know.
Yeah, you'll see that little bar ahead, and if you that'll show you if there's something in the chat.
I see it now. Okay, there we go. I can bring it. I have the chat up now. Good, thank you. So questions, post them in there and I'll get a reminder to the side here. All right, so this first one, we are recording? Yes, okay, good. So process dashboard fundamentals and personal projects. So this is something that a version of this process dashboard fundamentals that hasn't been given before. This is a merging of a module I've given dozens of times, and then also folds in details on personal projects, which I handled separately before in a very bad way. This is a wonderful integration of personal projects. So there's a number of topics being talked about in here. This is 44 slides, but some of them are going to be up just for a couple of seconds. But this is a big chunk of topics here. So we're going to be touching on how to create a personal project, which is a relatively new animal. That's an army of one. But then also we're going to talk about at a high level, creating workflows, proxy tables, and milestones. These are 3 things that are in the WBS Editor. I'm going to leave it at a high level and just showing you the high level through the slides. The demonstration and details about this will be in the second module about how to do it for a team. But this is talking about personal projects at first, and a lot of stuff we're going to talk about in this module applies to both working on a personal project and working on a team. So that's why this was a really good, one of the team members, Christiane Aber, did this, and it was a really good insight. All right, so then after talking about how to build a plan in a personal project at a high level, then we'll get into the day-to-day stuff about how do you pick a task in the dashboard, how do you log time and log mistakes and sign off tasks and entering size data, all in your your day-to-day activities in your personal dashboard. And a really important piece is tracking your progress against your plan. In this one here, I'm going to be talking about a couple of charts in detail about what they mean. And I'm using some information that Marcia and I worked on some time ago, and it's for data analysis. So Marcia Palmer Heff. So it's really cool stuff. I'm hoping that comes across well also. All right, so you got some special installation instructions in that that PDF I put in the zip for downloading. Talks about how to run a personal dashboard and a team dashboard for the demonstrations, like Andy's you see over here. Notice I didn't have, or I didn't need to have admin privileges. Dashboard is running off of Java, and Java, there's a version of Java in which you downloaded, and it's encapsulated, and the batch files that you're running when you double click on the quick launcher are referencing that version of dashboard. So everything's encapsulated there, and none of it needed admin privileges. So this is very important for NAVAIR because NAVAIR locks down their machines. NAVAIR Marine Corps Internet, NMCI. And so this was a wonderful feature of dashboard that it could be run or brought on board and run on a machine that's locked down for no development, no installations. Now, there's tons of resources out on tumasolutions.com. They're all about process dashboard. That thing you pull down, I call it it's a version of a drag and drop that we give to NAVAIR teams so that they don't have to know any details about installing dashboard. They just drag some folders, put them on their computer in a certain place, and they're off and running. It's different from what I did for you guys. So if you have a dashboard that you use at work, this one that you downloaded should not interfere with that. Hence the TPI TMT folder. All right, so let's talk about creating a personal dashboard. Now you can do this kind of stuff with Andy's, but in the personal dashboard, there's a hamburger stack or command stack or whatever name you want to give it to it. Pancake stack, I don't know if they've established a real name for you, but I'll use command stack. So you got a command stack here, and under it, there's a new project option, and you can select that, and you get this browser window pops up. And this is your personal dashboard creation wizard. So you just have a next over here, and it says welcome to it, and here's all the cool benefits of it. Click on next, and there's a really simple screen that pops up where you just need to put your name and a project name. And your name may already be there if you've already got other projects. But if you start with a brand new dashboard, you would put your name and the project name. Then you say how many hours a week you plan on working on it. And that's pretty much it. This one, whatever this comes up with, you can leave it the way it comes up. I won't overwhelm you with all the details, but just get that name and the project name and the number of hours a week, and then click on Create Project. And your dashboard will turn in from this guy, which looks like it's an empty one, to one that has a chore list, because you put chore list. And it'll be empty, but the project exists. And that's where you can fill it out from there. That's how simple it is to create a project. Creating a project in a team dashboard is much more involved. And this is one of the pushbacks we got. That's why David Tuma put together this personal project option. This is again for an army of one. So before I get into the other details, I wanted to just remind you that there's an option here for looking at help. David Tuma is doing a phenomenal job of all the different topics and the background behind the concepts of what this tool is used for, which is personal software process, and in NAVAIR, we also use it for outside of software, just in planning and tracking. But all the phenomenal help is all built into the files you downloaded. You don't have to, like in Project or Office, where you click on something and Excel help, and it says you're not online. All those files, all that information is in the stuff you downloaded, so it's standalone. Anyway, just to let you know, it's all in there. Phenomenal job David's done managing and maintaining that documentation. All right, so now we have this personal project's been created, it's chore list, but it's empty. And so how do we fill it out? We fill it out through a work breakdown structure editor. I will stay at a high level and give you a chance to do hands-on on the WBS Editor in the next demonstration, but here's that demonstration of making a new project. New project, and a browser window will come up. Like this. Here's the click on the next. And see Andy's name is in here. This is Andy's project. So Andy Alpha is named. So I'll put in here. Do chore list I did, and in here there's going to be a sidebar. Do a couple of hours a week. And if you watch up here, Andy's dashboard goes now to the chore list I just created, and it's empty, nothing to the right of it. More on that later. And this tells you, hey, go on to the work breakdown structure editor and populate it. And we're done with this, with the wizard's nice job. So now we're going to go to the WBS Editor. And it brings up a window, looks like this, and I'll demonstrate the WBS Editor in detail in the next module. So here, she's populated it with a couple of items that need to be done in the chore list. And the trick here is you are capturing, your goal is to capture time for each of these pieces of work that need to be done. In Dashboard, we call them components. So you have components and tasks. I'll try to stick to that vernacular when we're talking about this. But really, you have another analogy for, you have rocks in the pile, and each rock is one of these components that need to be dealt with. And the trick is to come up with a time for each of these rocks and figure out how big your pile of work is. So to then go beyond just having this list of what I have to do, you may want to break it down into steps, and to do that and to get more detail to it so you can then track your progress on getting this list of work done. There are proxy estimating tables we'll talk about next, and workflows. And it helps you to come up with those times and to break that work down into smaller pieces that we'll call tasks. So in the WBS Editor, you have a proxy estimation tables. Now you saw that, going back a slide, it says clean a bathroom, mow the lawn, grocery shopping. Well, trick is if you do them over and over and over, and I think everybody cleans rooms more than once or goes shopping more than once, there you have some bins, and these bins help you to get quickly through how big or how long it's going to take to do that work. And so one of the problems teams have when they're looking at a pile of rocks, and they go, well, how much time is that going to take, or how big is that going to be? They start to get spun around and do analysis paralysis on whether it's going to be 3 pages. No, 4 pages. No, wait, no, it's going to be, and they start to, or worse yet, if it's bigger, they'll say 500 blocks. No, 450. No, 550, and they start to get spun up on the little details about a little bit higher, a little bit lower. To stop that, what we do is we have these proxy tables in the launch level, where the times in this case, or the sizes, are well separated from each other. So you have a doubling and halving going to from big to small, and doubling from small to big. And so when people look at it, they go, oh, it's one or the other. That's too big. That's closer. It's like the lesser of all evils, if you want to think of it that way. And you're just trying to find the one that's close to what you think it's going to be, as opposed to trying to figure exactly how big the estimated time or size should be. So this is one of the things that's taught in personal solver process, and we've taken it, and David's got it into the launch level, and this is how it works. So there is no save button for this proxy table. It's part of the WBS Editor, so you don't see a save up here. It's saved when you save the WBS changes. So here you see rooms are small or large, shopping trips are smaller to large, and newsletters, it's probably in our list, and newsletters, they're small to large. So now to apply that proxy, you pick a component, one of the rocks, and you would then say, well, this is shopping trip, Thanksgiving meal shopping. That's going to be a medium. So you see that she has clicked on one of the relative size columns in the WBS Editor, and will then pick the small, medium, and large to get the time brought over to the to the AWS Editor. Now, that's how you get your sizes and times for the rocks. But when you're doing the work, you want to break those rocks down into tasks. And so this can be used, these workflows can be used for doing that. And workflows are really important if you're going to do something more than once. This is one of the really big benefits to be able to make yourself better at whatever you've been doing. So if your job, if your world is cleaning rooms and going grocery shopping and writing newsletters, you want to have these processes so you can use the same set of steps over and over and over and start to see patterns in your performance and figure out where you can improve your process to make it more efficient, effective, and all those other possible ways of fine-tuning it and making what you have done be better. All of it's focused on, a lot of it can be made a lot better with having a workflow. And so in workflows, you have workflows centered on the kinds of work you have to do. So you saw cleaning rooms, here's the steps they do in cleaning rooms. Grocery shopping, same thing, there's a set of steps there, newsletter, set of steps there. And these are the steps that they would use. And so with that, you put these percentages about how much time you think, if you're going to spend some time cleaning, what percent of that time will be spent on these different tasks? And as example down here in newsletter, the majority of time is going to be spent drafting it, and then you're going to be checking it over and then sending it off. So the times aren't evenly weighted. This is the opportunity to weight them and give them more credit when you get through that part. So when you finish drafting your newsletter, you know you are done with the majority of the labor involved in getting that newsletter done. So to define a workflow, you get into the workflow editor, you type in the name of that workflow and you hit enter and tab, moves it over, and you start typing the names of the workflow. So there's your draft, you're planning your draft review in your print mail. And the types here are driven by this metric collection framework in the background. And that's important later when you get into the quality. But in the beginning, you just stick with it, keep it simple, and work on getting your getting you to follow the steps, the set of steps, and seeing if you got the right percentages associated with them. But later on, you'll do things like we've got down to there's just a couple now. You have overhead tasks, you have creating something, you're appraising something, and you have you found a problem in what you made. So there's just a couple of pieces, and those David Toom has really made to help you to come up with all kinds of metrics from the raw data that you're measuring. So you can pick the types of tasks, but right now I would say just focus on getting those steps in there and pick one single type to get through there, and then you can come back later and do the fine tuning. So you can look at quality. All right, so now I've talked about this already. You have a percentage out on the side here. And one of the features added to the dashboard has been if you don't have the steps adding up to 100%, like you see these two here, this one hasn't been entered yet, so the tool doesn't know that she typed a 30. It shows you a percentage. If it's not 100, it says, hey, by the way, it doesn't add up to 100. And you don't have to add up to 100. There are teams that make it so that the author has 100% and the inspectors have additional time above and beyond that. So there's no constraint here. It's just a matter of giving you an idea that, hey, you may want to add some more work. So now we've got a workflow that has the steps and the percentages. Now, when you apply it, you go into your DBS Editor and you pick a component. Now, you have the wonderful ability to pick multiple components and apply the same workflow to all of them. And this is a really, really important feature. You'll see this demonstrated in the second module, is that here she has over a dozen components selected, and she's going to pick. She goes up to workflows and comes down and picks the cleaning workflow that we just showed you earlier. And it's going to apply that workflow to all these different components and give them a bunch of tasks. So note that there's just the component, the times are over here, and then when we apply them, boom, each one now has a set of steps under them. And all she did was select them with a control shift, with a control down and select them, and then did the cleaning workflow applied to it. And all these tasks were created by the DBS Editor. Thank you, David Toom. Super, super improvement over the I remember using the Excel workbook, and this was a chore in the task page, if I remember right. And so now you have all these pieces, and by the way, it took that time for that component and spread it across the phases using the percentages you entered. So all that math was done for you too. Now, if your project, whether it's a single project or a team project, whether if it's going over a long period of time, you may have certain milestones along the way that you want to make sure that you're going to get certain parts of it done by that date for a demonstration, or making sure something's in place for the next phases to be built off of. And so you may enter milestones that are built on the iterations of your project, or certain, like I said, milestone or events are going to occur, like demonstrations or something. Or if you had to tell someone something was going to be ready at a certain time. All those are reasons to have milestones. So give them unique names and put them in chronological order. And commit dates are optional. You may say, hey, look, I've got, I don't see an obvious one right here to use, but you may have one that doesn't have a commit date, and you're trying to figure out, well, when can I tell them I'll have this part done? And you know it's between two other milestones, but you don't know exactly when. And so you can leave the commit date blank, and then you can look at your plan and say, oh, looks like I can get done third week in November, and go backwards. So if you don't have a specific commit date, you don't have to have one, but have these milestones in chronological order, in the order you think they're going to appear. That's very important. So then you can apply the workflow, the milestones, to all the different pieces, the different rocks in your pile, and that causes the children, like in this case, we applied November chores, got to November milestone. All the children of that big high-level rock have now inherited that milestone. You can also just go down to the bottom, like right here, Thanksgiving prep. You can give it its own another milestone. It doesn't have to have the one from the parent, so you can override that if you want to think of it that way. So in this case, you have all the rocks associated with milestones. If you don't have them associated with milestones, then the tool assumes that you will do those rocks and those tasks after you've done all the milestone work. That's why the chronological order is important. So what does it give you? So you see here's an army of one. At the bottom, you can pull up this time balance panel, and it shows these diamonds, these triangles pointed down. And these are the commit dates on a calendar bar that are sitting there. This is probably October and November, and it's Thanksgiving. This is December. So you have these 4 milestones, and the color of the bar beneath it with the diamond at the end, that's the sum of all the planned times that are associated with that milestone, and then comparing that to the availability of the worker or workers. So this case, Christiana's an army of 1, and so her availability at 4 hours a week, and the amount of pile of the time of all the planned time of all the rocks associated with October, that shows that she's just going to get it done in time. And then in November, maybe this is Thanksgiving. This is Thanksgiving, this is November. So if this is the Thanksgiving one, here's your pile for Thanksgiving. The tool assumes, for simplicity, that all the stuff for October will be done before the November work, before the Thanksgiving work is done, which will be done before the November work done, which will be done before the December work is done. And it's not that simple in the real world, but this is very helpful to prioritize in this way, because it can help you understand if you are not meeting this milestone, is it because you've got a ton of work on a previous milestone that's pushing all your work to the right? And it's not the problem with the work associated with this milestone, it's a problem associated with some previous milestone. Very, very valuable for load leveling your team to be able to meet commit dates along the way of your project. And so this case is the good news. She is able to meet and get the work done to support each milestone before the milestones due. Teams often have issues with some milestones because their work isn't load leveled across the team. And this clearly shows, hey, get some work off of Jimmy, give it to Susie, and I think we're going to be closer to being able to make them. So very, very powerful tool. All right, so now let's get it out of the project. We talked about at a very high level how you identify the rocks, size them, break them up into pieces. And because it's an army of one, you had all the work on your plate, associated with milestones, and then boom, now you've got a project. Let's talk about the day-to-day when you're executing that project and you're doing things and you want to be able to capture the four major pieces of the work. There's time, size, mistakes, and completion dates. And those are the four things that are the raw measures that are then taken by a tool like Process Dashboard, and you convert those or make them into metrics to be able to look at your performance and mean your schedule and quality commitments. So now we're going to talk about that day-to-day and tracking your progress. So here's some fundamentals about the Process Dashboard interface. So on the right of these buttons here, you have this list of names separated by forward slashes, and these are nodes through a hierarchy menu. And that's the way you saw that briefly in the WBS editor. It's a hierarchical structure of work. So all the rocks are nested under other rocks until finally at the end, the rocks are broken into tasks. Those are like your leaves in the tree. And so here you see the scrub or dust tasks on the far right, and everything else are components. Scrub and dust of the clean upstairs bathroom of the October chores of the chore list project. And so here you see in the hierarchy editor, which is something you can see in the dashboard, here's a scrub and dust task under the clean upstairs bathroom component, under the October chores component, under the chore list project. So it's just a path through a hierarchy to a task. And the way you navigate is you would click on that current task or that current component, and you would see all of the other siblings at that level. So in this case, you see an animation of analyze data is one of half a dozen different tasks. And so you can pick a different task if you want to navigate among the tasks under weekly 2, or you see under weekly 2, you could go to weekly 1 or weekly 2. Those both exist. And those are under report generation, which also might have siblings of its own that you can then navigate. They're different branches of the hierarchy, all under my project. So this is one way to simply navigate. There are multiple ways to navigate. I'll just show you this one. This will be simple enough to get you through it. So that's how you navigate. Once you have a task that you want to log time against, the buttons on the far left here beside the command stack, they're used to run the timer and pause the timer. So here you see these two vertical bars, which are highlighted with the blue, and they are showing you that the timer is not running. And if you click on this run button, then you see that the timer is now running, and it's a green button. The reason why the different colors is you can have this in the corner of your dashboard. I'm going to go back to a project that I have tasking on. You see there's those two buttons. And if it's in the corner of your desktop and you're doing your real work on the rest of the desktop, you don't want to see a green dot and go, which one's green? But now you have a green, the timer's going, blue, or a blue, then the timer's paused. So in the corner of your eye, you can tell without even look at it that the timer's running by having this green dot in the corner of your peripheral vision. So that's how you do. You notice there's no stop. There's either you're paused or you're running. All right, so that's how you log time, and it logs time down to the minute. And every time a minute goes by, it updates it. So if your machine crashes, it doesn't matter if, oh, I had half an hour of work, I lost it. You won't lose it in dashboard because every minute it's updating your time log. All right, so it is common when you first start doing this that you forget to turn the timer on or forget to turn the timer off. So dashboard TUM has made it very, very simple and straightforward to, oh, I don't know if you guys, I had my screen's flash. I'm still sharing, it looks like. Okay. So, so when you're backlogging your time, we make it really simple so you can go back to work. We encourage you to do real time so you're not sitting there on Friday at 5 o'clock and your friends are all running down to the bar. You have to go, oh shoot, I didn't log any time this week. What did I work on? We don't want you to be in that condition, that situation. So what you can do then is you go to your task that you forgot. Like say you've been working 2 hours this morning and you go, oh shoot, I forgot, turn my timer on. So you're on your task. And so you just go down from the command stack to the time log, it pulls up the time log editor, and it comes up with the task you have active. So it takes you right to it. And then when you click on add, it adds a line here with the current, absolute current date stamp, and it pre-selects the delta. And this is the time you need to enter. So all you're doing, you're clicking on add and you go and type the number in, the 120 or the 2 hours, and then you hit return and get out of here. And you go back to work. As an example of that, here I'm working on the retrospective. And so I'm sitting there for 2 hours to go, oh shoot, I forgot about it. And so I can enter here the time log editor pops up. You see it picked retrospective. I click on add. Here's a line that gets added. And you notice the delta is selected. I type in the time, 120, hit enter. It turns it into the format that it wants, but you don't have to follow that. As long as you have a colon, it assumes everything to the left is the hours, everything to the right is the minutes, and then save and close. And you just added more time to that file. Now I'm way over budget. 9.5 hours on a 15-minute task. I'm going to get in trouble when my team gets together on that one. So that's how easy it is. We want to make it easy for you to, when you find out you haven't been logging the time, get it logged and then get back to trying to do it real time. The reason why this is important is you want to capture the task time, which you talk about in the first half of this world, but that's how we do it, make it easy to do. All right, so now logging mistakes. So on logging mistakes, when you find a mistake and you have to spend time fixing it, that's what we want to capture, another one of the 4 measures. And so when you are working on something, in this case, we're testing program 1 in a class, a PSP for engineers class. When we find that something isn't working right and it's not giving us the right answer, we hit the bug button. And yes, it's a bug button because the tool was originally made for software developers doing personal software process. But I call it a mistake because everybody makes mistakes. So I have my screens flash again. Okay, so everybody makes mistakes and you can find and fix mistakes. So that nomenclature makes it open to beyond software where they talk about injecting defects and removing defects. But this is a bug because that's what mistakes are in software, is bugs. So when you first see that mistake, program should have generated a 12 and it made a 7. You hit the bug and this window pops up. Don't fill it out. Leave your timer going and go into your product and go find out what was wrong. And don't come back to this until you fixed it. Now you see this timer right here is logging time against test. And you see this timer here is logging time against the fixed time. And they're in lockstep. So if I was doing the retrospective on display table, this is from the point of view of someone who's doing a table in a Macy's store, like a display case. Think of a table full of shoes. They found there was a mistake in what they did. They hit the bug and this pops up. And I just let it sit here. Oh, my timer should be going. Sorry. Timer should be going on the retrospective. Let me close that off here. So I hit the bug and I find I had a mistake. The timer's running to show you tenths of minutes. And so I'm logging time against the retrospective. Now I have a problem and I dive in to solve the problem. And some of the shoes are going to fall off the table or something. I found the mistake and now I'm fixing it. I'm fixing. And I leave it here. I don't try to fill out the fields until I have fixed the mistake. So now I'm going to put this aside here. See the screen. So once I found and fixed the mistake, now I can fill out this mistake log. And so you have a type of mistake and decorators. I'm going to just pick interface to say that some of the shoes were on top of others and customers wouldn't be able to get to the shoes. And where I made the mistake, you now have the ability to say, where was I in my process? I was putting together the the display, and then I'm removing it in the testing. So I'll go down to the testing. Hold on, failure. So where I was when I made the mistake, where I was when I found the mistake, and how much time it took me to fix the mistake. You may want to pause this. This is super important. So when you're filling this out, feel free to pause what's going on. You see the timer pause as well. You can break this link and you can reestablish it. But normally, if you're logging to a mistake, you want to log to the place where you're working that mistake. So now you have here, it says overlapping shoes. And we'll fall off table. And I did this. I put overlapping shoes because this is your mistake. So what did you do originally that caused you to have to spend time now fixing it? This might be half an hour, might be multiple hours. You don't know until you solved it and fixed it. So now you've got that in there, and then you finally say, okay, this is super important that you put down the cause for this. Yeah, the cause, not the symptom, not the cure. You want to put in here, I had to move some shoes. That's your symptom. The reason why is you want to put original cause is that you're going to look at these later and find out what mistakes are you making, not what solutions you are fixing, or not what solutions you put in, or if it wasn't working right, you don't say it wasn't working this way, it wasn't working that way. Why wasn't it working that way? I want to get back to the cause and about what mistakes I made, so that you can then change your process and be a better, in this case, a decorator. So if I keep seeing this over and over in my defect log that I keep overlapping shoes, I'll start remembering that and become more conscious of it and fix it and not make that mistake as late in the game. So a customer will never find the shoes overlapping, and when they touch them, they fall off the display or whatever. All right, so when you're done, then you say okay like I did, and now it's logged back there. Now, you can go back and fix your mistakes. No, fix the description of your mistakes by going to that command stack and going to defect log, and it pops up. And then you can go ahead and you see it pops up where I was. There's a defect I just entered. I double click on it. It brings up that dialog, and I can change it and fix it. Fix my description to be better. Or if I discovered later I really made a mistake somewhere else or a different kind of defect type, then you can fix those. All right. So no burnt bridges here. All right, so now we talked about logging time and logging mistakes or defects. So now we've got marking tasks as complete. I notice there is no stop over here. So the way that you say that you're done working on something is by having this box on the far right be checked, and it toggles. So when you check it, a little check appears like you see in the animation, and there's some administrative being done in the tool in the background where you're getting credit for it. It's going to collect that data, with today being the completion date. So when you generate charts, it'll show that you've made progress. Now, if you uncheck it, it will undo that math and all that progress. And so it does all that in the background for you either way. So if you check off something, your team later tells you, hey, we weren't done with that yet, we have some more to do. You go, oops, and you can go back and uncheck it and do more work. Now it does all the administration, all the administrative in the back. Now, sometimes you may be in a meeting and they'll say, hey, Jimmy, why don't you have that peer review, that inspection signed off? We did that 2 weeks ago. If you went into your tool and just checked the box, you would get credit for it this week. Well, in TPI and in TSP, we want the progress, the completion date to be the right week, not just whatever the current week is. And so if it was 2 weeks ago, then you need to put a date back then. And so the easy way to do that is a capability that David Tuma added, where you control click on this box and a calendar pops up, and then you would just pick a date. So in this case, say that retrospective was done in the past, all other pieces are done. I can control click on this, and let me put cursor over there, you see a pop-up here that says, click this mark to phase complete, control click to select a completion date. So I control click, here's the calendar pops up, and I can then put in the date. And again, we care about the right week. So that's the important part. Now you see the check appears and it shows December 1st as the completion date. All right, and again, same kind of thing as if you uncheck it, it gets rid of that. And now there is no completion date. All right, so nice and easy. This is a really nice feature. That's it right there. All right, now backlogging. Another way to do backlog is their task schedule page. I'll show you later. And you can have a completion date column, and you can go in and fill out one of those fields there with the right date. And you also have a calendar pops up on that also. This one here, the control click, is a much better way to do it. Thank you, David Tuma. All right. Now, so now we talked about signing things off. Entering size data. So why would you enter size data? Well, one of the reasons why you're in dashboard is to get plan times for the work that you're going to have to do. And oftentimes that plan time for how long does it take you to dig that ditch or write that white paper, it's driven by how long that ditch is or how many pages you think the white paper is going to have and the rate at which you dig ditches or the rate at which you write white papers. So this actual productivity rate, you need that. Well, how'd you get that? Well, you get that by looking at your sizes and times of work you've done in the past ditches you've done, past white papers you've written. And so you need actual sizes for how long those ditches were or how many pages were in those papers and the actual times that you took to dig those ditches and to write those papers. And that will give you your pages per hour or linear feet per hour for your ditches. And that is how you get your actual productivity rate, which you need to do the planning for the next pile of work you're about to estimate. You need that time. Well, how do you get your actual sizes? You need to log them once the work is done because you don't know how big it is until you finished it. So there's a couple ways to do that. One way which has been there for a long time is there's a size inventory pull down in the command window. So here it is. This is project size inventory, and it pulls up an inventory, and you can type in, like you see over here, actual sizes for some of these pieces, and all the pieces that you have plans and actuals for appear in this list. Another way, and this is a relatively new piece, this is really nice, you can open up the WBS Editor and you can go to an actual size tab and enter that size. Reason why this is an actual size again, why this is beneficial is that anybody can enter this. So on the size inventory, the individual that owns that component or that is the author of that work, that they have to enter the size in their size inventory. The WBS, anybody can do that. And that's really helpful if someone's forgotten to enter it. Then if someone else discovers that, they can say, well, how big was it? And they can go enter it for them, like a planning coordinator. Now there's a third way, and that is that the owner, if they're using the size estimating template, can enter the size, actual size then. And we'll talk about that in the third module today. All right, so now we had times, mistakes, completion dates, and sizes. Those are the four major measures that are being captured. And so now we're looking at tracking. So in tracking, there's the script button, and there's a little drop-down button here, which is useful in other applications. But in the field, pretty much both of these pull up this list of common commands. You see, click on the pull down or click on the button. You don't want to get the same list of commands. And they drive you to these charts and tables, which can help you understand your progress. So the project task schedule takes you to a table. I'll show you details in a few slides. There's earned value charts. There's a number of charts that can pop up that you can see what's going on. And then there's the weekly report, which gives you some cool information also to quickly tell you what's happening to you or your team. So this is a really important pull down to see your status. So let's talk about the task schedule window. Very creative name for the window because sure enough, it has a task list and a schedule in it. Those are the two pieces. Looking at the task list part, you have that hierarchical structure with these plus and minus switches, click on them to expand or collapse that component to see its children and drive down to whatever you need to look at. Now the tables in here have some abbreviations for brevity, and if you put your cursor over them, and I'll pull this up here. Again, I went to the project task schedule. This window popped up. You put your cursor over one of these headings and it pops up and shows you in a little dialog window what that stands for. And no one is paying you to look at a table of data and try to figure out what it's telling you. So please don't. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. That idiom has a reason for being true, and we try to rely on pictures. These tables drive the pictures. So if you see pictures that don't make sense, you may come back to these tables to figure out what's going on here. Now, most of the fields are white, and that means that they are computed for you. And these ones that are yellow are the ones you can edit, like we talked about before with the completion dates. And you see that there's some completion dates that can be filled out. Let me widen this out. And some planned times that can be modified also. All right, leave that open in case I need it. So now the bottom half, this is your schedule. This is your availability, super important. This is your project. And so it should reflect your availability. As classic case here, these are all 4 hours a week. Going back here to see if I have any in the ancient past here. Here's a case where Thanksgiving week, Andy took a half week off. And so he planned on taking part of the week off for Thanksgiving. Given that he planned to take that off, when he came back from Thanksgiving, he wasn't behind schedule because he only planned on spending 7 hours. And so that's what you do. And I'll show you the charts later. You plan on being gone. It doesn't have anything here, but it looks like he took off Christmas also. It looks like they were going to finish their work. No, they still have more to do. Anyway, you put these zeros and partial weeks in here. Here's another partial week. And you plan on being gone before you go, oh, shoot, I forgot to tell you guys, you're gone next 4 weeks. That would cause your completion date to move to the right. Well, you want to plan your availability, and this is where you control that and you own this. This is your availability. All right, pictures worth 1,000 words. Here's how you pull them up on the task schedule page. Up here in the upper left, there's a view pull down, and that you can see there's charts. Also in the bottom right, there is a chart button. And the reason why they're there is it started in the lower right, and the process dashboard team got some feedback that, hey, all of our applications have it in the upper left. He make yours more standard. So he added the pull downs to the upper left, got rid of the ones in the bottom right, and most of his users went, what are you doing? I'm so used to them being down there. So fine. So they're both there. This is a carryover from the original interface. Both of them pretty much take you with different options to the same thing you want to get to, and that is a chart. When you pull up a chart, you have over a dozen different charts. 3 of them are super important in NAVAIR, and those are the ones I'll be talking about in detail, but there's lots of them. So these are the rough names of those charts, and we'll go into each in a little detail. So there's this is your progress, this is your getting time on task, and this is what are you working on now. Let's talk about each of those in detail. Oh, by the way, this is a typical individual task in progress. Each one of these represents something that you're working on. You started, but you haven't finished. More detail later, what the circles and tick marks are. But in general, you have half a dozen or less, because you really shouldn't have too many irons in the fire. And when you're working on something like digging the ditch, you're working on one task at a time. You sign it off, work on the next one, sign it off, work on the next one. You don't have all the tasks open at once. It's like writing a white paper. You draft it, you're done drafting it. Now you're reviewing it, you're done reviewing it, sign that off. You're publishing it, you publish it, sign that off. And you sign them off. So you only have one task at a time open in here, maybe 2 if you're waiting for inspection and you press on with the next step. But you just have a handful. But a team has lots of them. And this is where the power of the task in progress chart is you can look at this mess and quickly be able to tell which tasks you really need to talk about. And we'll come back to this later and see, even though it looks like Greek to you now, we'll come back to this later and hopefully you will have enough knowledge to be able to say, oh, I know what the issue is. So let's talk about the first one, cumulative direct hours. Cumulative direct hours is a chart that has a red line and a blue, I'll get this in a second. First thing you want to look at is the scale. Across the bottom, the scale may be months or weeks or days based upon the scope of your project. So you've got to make sure you understand what scope you're looking at. And that's in these vertical bars here, look at the distance between them. Once you know them for your project, it's going to stay the same. It's not going to change from week to week, but realize it's not always, like in this case, a month. Now, on the Y scale, you have hours. And so these are task hours. And if you don't know TPI or PSP, this is the time, part of the week that you spend working on your pile of rocks. So if you're working 40 hours a week in your paycheck, you're not working 40 hours a week on your pile of rocks. There's a lot of things you do that are not being logged in Process Dashboard because they are not part of you working on the rocks. Status meetings, answering phone calls, working with the rest of your team on other stuff. So you only spend part of your time working on your pile of rocks. And this is that time, we call it task hours. So in here, you've got a red line. That is your planned availability. That's that column here for your planned availability. And then you have a blue line, and this person here has really got their dialed in. So their plan, their actuals are very close together. And the actuals stop on wherever this snapshot was taken, this picture was taken the end of December. And so this is where the actuals stop. And it shows, like here, he planned on being gone and he was gone. So this is probably Andy. I don't know. Take a look at it later. But that's the blue line, is the actuals. And you want them to be close together. And then the green line is the forecast about, given Andy's performance so far, where do we expect him to go in the future? And this is an algorithm based upon past performance. And then you also have a forecast, which is where do we expect him to go from this point forward, given his plan has been laid out the way it is? Where will his plan go? So forecast takes into account his past performance. Replan just says, assuming that his plan continues as he planned, where will it go from here? All right. And notice when he reduced his availability, I think that's reflected here. Here's that 7. Didn't expect to spend as much hours. And then here is that 0 at the end of December. I think it's also in here, 0 at the end of December. And so this reflects his availability. And if you change a number in the schedule, the lines here, plans or actuals, shift. All right. Now another chart, earned value versus cost. This one's telling you whether you've got the work, getting the work done in a timely fashion. And so the plan here is the time in hours, estimated hours. It's the sum of the estimated hours of the tasks that you should have signed off by the calendar time. So here you see now you've got, looks like 2-week intervals between the dotted lines. So we zoomed in to look at this closer. And the red line shows at what rate you should be getting your pile of rocks done. This may not be the entire pile. We were zoomed in on it, but this is showing whether you're getting things done in a timely fashion. The blue line is what is the sum of the planned time of the work you've been signed off so far. So if you are getting things done in a timely fashion, then you're doing great, and you're getting things, you're on pace to get the pile of work done where the red line would normally end. And so you're going to be on schedule. So this is not % complete, but it's equivalent to that. You're seeing how much of the pile has been done. I should have 110 hours of work signed off. I got 118 hours of work signed off. Yay. Now the green line is how much real time did it, actual task time did it take me to do that work that's on the blue line. And so this case here, he said I've got 50 hours of work signed off, and it took me 45 hours to do it, roughly. And so that means, okay, good, your estimates are in the ballpark. There's all kinds, and this is a sunny day scenario, but there are all kinds of scenarios, and here's your sunny day in the middle. And I'm not gonna go over these in detail, but When these lines are not with each other, this gives you insight into what's happening with your plan. Like in this case, you're way ahead of schedule. The blue line's way ahead of the red line, but your green line is down near the red line. And so what you've done here is you said, I'm getting all kinds of earned value because I overestimated what it would take to do the job. And I'm getting everything done for half the time I thought it would take. I thought it would take me 180, 160 hours to get that work done. It only took me 75. So this tells you got a problem overestimating. And so each of these 9 pictures tells you a story. Everything's happy or something's broken. Here's the opposite of that case. You are behind schedule. The blue line's below the red line. And you look at this green line going, well, it's near the red line. I guess I underestimated the labor it was going to take me to do the job. I thought it only take me 60 hours to get this work done, but it really took me over 110. And now you know why you're behind schedule. Now you know why you're ahead of schedule. And the rest of these guys also. The blue and red lines are not close together, then you're either ahead or behind. Let's see, these you're ahead, these you're behind. Yeah. So these are all pictured, all 3 of these lines have relationships to each other to help you understand what's happening to make your plan better, your planning assumptions better next time. Okay, there's a couple more slides left. So now task in progress. This is the one that I really wanted to spend a little time on to help you understand it. So we got this task in progress. This is called a circle of circles. And each task or each circle is a task that you've started but not completed. So there's 3 sets of tasks in your plan. There's those you have not started yet, those that you started but haven't finished, and those that you finished. So this is the middle group. I've started them, but I haven't finished. And so each of these have time logged against them. And so the size of the circle, purple circle in this case, the whole circle is related to the amount of time that was spent on that task so far, actual time. Now, it's related to the area, not the diameter or the circumference, but the area. So what that allows us to do is to have the task with the small amount of time be a very small circle, and the task with the most time become big dominant circles. And so they get our attention. And so this massive circle of circles, all of these are tasks which have a planned time of 8 hours. So what you're seeing here is one analogy I use is that there is a picture in the background of this task. And what you're seeing is a piece of white paper over it. And as you spend time on it, a hole appears in this paper and shows you the image behind it. And as you spend more time on it, you see more of the picture behind the piece of paper. And so here you see just 15 minutes or 45 minutes spent on a 8-hour task. You're at 10%. And so you just see a dot. But when you get over 20 to 25%, like in task 2, you spent 3.5 hours on it. They're almost halfway through it. You see a tick mark which represents I've spent a quarter of my planned time. Again, you uncovered that first tick mark. As you spend more and more time here on task 3, you cross the 50% line, you see a second tick mark appear at noon on the circle. As you spend more time, you go over the 3/4 mark. And so at almost 7 hours, you've got 85% of the 8 hours spent. And the circle, the hole's getting bigger and bigger, you're seeing more and more of that image. And when you cross 100%, you don't stop working because your goal is to finish the job. What you do see is this red ring appears. First, it's just this bright red ring. And then as you spend more and more time and go well beyond 8 hours, it just has a band that goes from red to the purple color that is on the circle. And so you see that the outside edge of this whole thing is the 15 hours that have been logged so far. And so each of these could be looked at as various stages over time of one task as you log time to it. But I made this by having 5 tasks with different amounts of time to it. So you see that when you get to these different points, you uncover the tick marks and you uncover the red ring. And if this person continued to spend more time on this 8-hour task, just the circle get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the red ring will stay at 8 hours. And then you'd have this red to purple band. And imagine at 500 hours, the 8 hours would be a pretty small piece of this giant red ring, giant red circle with a little 8-hour in in the middle, and all these cookie cutter 8s would fit inside the 500 hours. So at some point it becomes really crazy and it becomes something you just can't ignore anymore. That's the wonderful part of this. So that explains the circles, is that the size of the circle is driven by the amount of actual time. Now, different point of view here is let's look at, oh, I'm sorry, Steve Shook had a question about forecast versus replan. Tell you what, let me finish talking about this and I'll go back to that. Sorry, Steve, I didn't see that. Okay, so finish to task in progress. These are 5 tasks. They all have different plan times. And so now we're seeing that each one has 5 hours of time logged against them. So all the circles are the same size, but now you're seeing tick marks and red rings at different places on these tasks. And this shows you that the tick marks and the red ring are driven by the plan time. And so you see task 1 is 5 hours logged against a huge task, 22 hours. And so you've only used less than a quarter of the planned time. So you don't even see a tick mark because 5 hours isn't even a quarter of the 22. And here in number 2, you see appropriate, you've gone over a quarter, so you see a first tick mark because the planned time is now just 15 hours and 5 is a third of 15 and so forth and so on. So you drive down to 5 hours is well over 3 hours. And so you see a red ring and the 3 tick marks. And so here you're not gonna have tasks with the same planned time. And so you're gonna have the tick marks and the rings being at different scales, driven by their planned times. And the size of the ring, the size of the circles are driven by the actual times. Well, you combine those together, this is those first 5 and second 5, you're getting something that looks like what we were looking at before, is a smattering of a ring, of a circle of circles with different size circles, different size red rings and tick marks. And you're seeing now that some are driven by the red rings driven by different plan times, and there's different size circles driven by the different actual times. This idea of having the this circle of circles is super important for a team to look at because it gives them a feel for how much time the team has spent that they're not getting any credit for. One of the things we talk about in the previous portion of this one-day training is that you get credit for signing off a task, and you get credit based upon the planned time, not upon the actual time you spent, but the planned time. And that's your earned value. And one of the constraints behind that is you don't get any partial credit. So even though you are, in this case, on the 22nd hour of a 8-hour task or something, you don't have any credit at all. So you're going, I spent 2 weeks on this thing, I don't get any credit? That's right. That's why you don't want to have tasks be so big, so you can get things signed off and get credit as you go. Every week you're signing something off. And so if the team has got a lot of time invested in open tasks, they want to understand that, yeah, they're behind because they've got a lot of partial progress that not getting any credit for. And this might help them to understand they need to stop starting new tasks and get some of these other ones signed off to give the team the credit they deserve. Now these are done, but if they focus on them, they might be able to get them done and get back on schedule just by getting some of these partial progress done. Another benefit of this guy is if you see something that's huge, like right now I see this one here, doesn't have any tick marks on it, and yet it's got 5 hours locked in it. I have a little red light that comes on, and a coach screen. Wow, that means this is at least 4 times bigger than what it is because it's not even a quarter yet. And so I might look at that and say, who's doing that and what is it? And maybe she's broken down into smaller tasks before they go any farther and spend 22 hours working on something they're not going to get credit on for a long time. So that's the benefit of this, is you can look at this and you can identify problems before they become problems, or problems before they become bigger problems. Now, go back to the one that we showed in the beginning, that mess. Given that you have the insight, one of the guidance that we tell the teams is that if anything goes over a week of labor, and like I mentioned, task hours are a fraction of the 40 hours. So let's call it 15 or 20 hours a week. That's your labor for an individual. if someone's over a week of labor and they're over budget or they're over their planned time, they should be reporting on how they're doing on that task. And if they're not, the team should do intervention and say, Jimmy, do you need help with that? How are you doing? You're almost done. And they just don't want to ignore it, because what happens next week gets even bigger, bigger and bigger. When do you eventually address this? Because the team won't meet a commit date until all these tasks are signed off. And so now you're looking at this pile of tasks. You can see there's a couple that probably need that attention of they're over 15 hours and they're over budget. So they have a red ring and they're big. So you're not going to even look at these guys, even though they have red rings. They're small little guys. This is like maybe an hour over a 2 hour, an hour over a 1 hour task. Let's have a room of 10 people talk about why they're over for an hour. Oh shoot, we just wasted a bunch of time, right? So you don't even want to talk about these guys. But now you see that these two here, and maybe these three here, they're the ones that need to be talked about. Maybe not even that guy. And again, a team lead can look at this and talk to the individuals. Because when you pull up a task and schedule or a chart for an individual, you can put your cursor over it. It tells you the plan, the actual time, and on a team, it tells you who's working on it. And so there's that one, the 9.5 hours on a 15-minute task. That's what it looks like. So you can see that the big ones dominate the chart and going, well, you're way over budget here. What's going on with that? So the team leader can do that too with these three, and offline, go and talk to Jimmy and see if he's working that, or in the team meeting, if it comes up on an individual's chart, you'd say, hey, you didn't mention this, what's going on? They go, well, we'll be done next week. Say, great, fine. Next week comes up, it's still there, a little bigger. Jimmy says we'll be done next week. How you doing? And if Jimmy's in denial, at some point the team goes, Jimmy, you think you're done, but you haven't been done for the last 5 weeks. Let's get some other pair of hands on this. And then they talk offline and work on getting Jimmy past this hurdle. So this is the power of this combination of the size of the circles and these red rings, is they jump out. These four need to be talked about. This one maybe, even though there's a couple dozen, maybe 30 bubbles on here. I don't care about these. Okay, any questions on this one? This is a pretty non-intuitive, but I hope this last couple of slides explained the decoder ring about how to look at them. All right, so going over this, what I talked about, I started out by talking about how to create a personal project, and then how to lay out workflows, using workflows, proxy tables, and milestones to flesh out the work that you're going to do in that project. And then once you've got that set of tasks now before you, you start to pick a task, log time against it, log mistakes against it, mark the task off as complete. Enter how big that was, because you may have blown your time budget, but it was because it was twice as big as what you thought it was going to be. Super important for you to capture the actual sizes. And then while you were working that project, I showed you those charts that we use to make sure a member can report to the team, and a team can have its project status reported to the members. And here we are on ahead of schedule, behind schedule. We're getting enough time on task, and we've got little enough time on task in progress. Now, with all this in your that we just showed you, you now have most of what you need to be able to create a personal project and take off and run. I did not give you in the downloadables what you needed to start from scratch, but it's a pretty simple step to go from there. And if you want to make a personal dashboard from scratch, you can either reach out to me or for David Tuma, and we would be able to help you set that up. I just didn't have time to add that instructions to this set. Little handoff here. I didn't create this all myself. I built upon I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. PSP, Personal Software Process, and TSP, you've already mentioned those names. They were made by Watts, and I'll talk about him at the end. And the process dashboard tool, David Tuma and his group, a phenomenal tool for doing it. And I've used other tools to do PSP, TSP, and TPI. TPI is not there because TPI was kind of coined by NAVAIR, so it's in here, or it's already the term that we use in NAVAIR all the time. It's basically PSP without, or TSP without software.